Okay, welcome back in. I'm going to see if I can get caught up on the hockey between Wednesday, April 2nd and Thursday, April 3rd. On Wednesday, we had a total of 5 games, starting in New York as we had the Rangers who played host to the Minnesota Wild. The final score would be 5-4 in this game, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Vincent Trocheck, just 24 seconds into the overtime frame. So the game-winning goal would go towards the Rangers, and they are hoping to keep their playoff hopes alive. All right, next game took place in the Metropolitan Division as we had the Carolina Hurricanes played host to the Washington Capitals. The game-winning goal would come off the stick of Jackson Blake, a power play goal, his 13th on the season from Taylor Hall and Shane Gothisberg, just 10 minutes and 11 seconds of the first. They would go on to win by a final score of 5-1. The interesting thing about this game was that the only goal was scored for the Capitals was Alexander Ovechkin, and because he got his 39th goal of the season, he is now 3 goals away from getting the all-time record. 2 away from tying, 1 away from immortality. All right, we had a battle in the Atlantic Division between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. The final score would be 3-2, as you can see on the screen, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Matthew Knies, who scored with just under 5 minutes to go, 4 minutes and 51 seconds to be exact, getting his 26th goal of the season from Marner and McCabe. The Panthers would add one more late goal, but unfortunately they were not able to tie it, so as I said, the final score would be 3-2. All right, now we're off to the Central as we have the Chicago Blackhawks playing host to the Colorado Avalanche. Blackhawks took an early 2-0 lead. The Colorado Avalanche would bounce back and tie the game up with 11 seconds to go. This game would need to go to overtime. No one would score then. Then they have to settle for a shootout. And Arturi Lehkonen would get the game-winning goals. Despite the fact that the Avalanche were down 2-0, they would come back and complete the comeback, winning 3-2 in a shootout. And the last game took place in the Pacific as we had the Vancouver Canucks playing host to the Seattle Kraken. The Kraken would win 5-0. Therefore, the first goal of the game, which was 16:42 of the first, scored by Michael Eyssimont, would be the game-winning goal. All right, that takes care of Wednesday's quick recap. Now we'll take a look at Thursday's games. We had a grand total of 9 games on tap. So let's dive in. So the first game took place between two Original Six franchises, between Montreal Canadiens and the Boston Bruins. Cole Caulfield would end up getting the game-winning goal, making it 2-0, getting his 35th goal of the season from Suzuki and Slavkovsky. 14:24 of the second period. The Habs would add 2 more goals. And yeah, the final score would be 4-1 in favor of the Habs. The Ottawa Senators played host to the Tampa Bay Lightning, 2 teams that are more than likely going to make the playoffs. The game-winning goal would come off the stick of Jake Sanderson on a power play, his 10th of the season, from Stützle and Ridley Gregg. 5:17 of the second, and they would win by a final score of 2-1. The next one was essentially a football score. The final score would be 7-3 in favor of Colorado, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of, we'll see here in just a second, Parker Kelly would get the game-winning goal, putting the Avs up 4-3 at that point. They would add 3 more goals on top of that to win it's a game that they needed to win if they still want to be competitive. They should make the playoffs, but obviously they would prefer to be in the top 3 spot. The Avs would, at least. And for the Blue Jackets, this game definitely hurt to lose because they're still competing for that final wildcard spot in the East. There's at least 3 or 4 teams, I would say, once I take a look at the standings, and it's very close this late in the season. All right, the St. Louis Blues would play host to the Pittsburgh Penguins. They'd be tied at 1. Pittsburgh would regain the lead. Tied at 2, 3-2, 4-2, 4-3, 4-4. This game would need to go to overtime, and Robert Thomas would get the game-winning goal 2 minutes and 12 seconds in the overtime frame. On the power play, his 20th of the season from Jordan Kyrou. And with that victory, the Blues have now won 11 straight games for the second time in their franchise history. The first time was back in 2019 when they were last, I believe, in January of 2019. Then they came roaring back, had an amazing run, and would go on to win their Stanley Cup. And even if the Blues do finish as a wildcard team, they're still going to be a very dangerous team in the West because they've now got their ish together. So watch out. Doesn't matter if you're the top seed of the West or you're second or third seed. If the Blues keep up with the pace, who knows where they can finish by the end of the year. All right, the Dallas Stars, a team that has clinched a playoff spot. Oh, sorry, I do apologize. Colorado has officially clinched a playoff spot with that win too, so I should have mentioned that as well. The Dallas Stars, who have clinched a playoff spot, the top three teams in the Central all have an X beside their name. Final score on this one would be 5-1 in favor of the Stars. The game-winning goal would come off the stick of Mason Marchment just 39 seconds into the third period, breaking the 1-1 tie. For Marchment, that'd be his 20th goal of the season, assisted by Matt Duchesne. They would add 3 more goals after that one, so they would blow out the Predators 5-1. But I mean, what team hasn't beaten the Predators this year? Am I right? All right, the Utah Hockey Club played host to the Los Angeles Kings. The final score would be 4-2 in favor of the Kings, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Trevor Moore, his 18th of the season from Philippe Danault, 4 minutes and 50 seconds of the third. Each team would add one more goal apiece, and the Kings would double up on Utah 4-1. All right, now we're off to Calgary as the Flames played host to the Anaheim Ducks. The game-winning goal would come off the stick of Blake Coleman. He would score just over halfway through the game, getting a shorthanded goal unassisted, 10:25 of the second period. The Flames would add 2 more goals after that, winning by a final score of 4-1. Coleman had 2 goals in the game. All right, now we're off to 2 teams that are red hot. Both of them are atop of their respective divisions. The Jets are still in first place in the Central, and the Golden Knights have a fairly comfortable lead in the Pacific Division as well. So the Jets would shut out the Golden Knights in this game 4-0. The game-winning goal would come off the stick of Mark Scheifele. He would score with just under 7 minutes to go in the first, getting his 37th goal of the season from Iafallo and Luke Shen. They would go on to score 3 more goals after that, and they would shut out the Golden Knights, a team that, let's be honest, if both these teams keep at it, this could be a preview of the Western Conference Final. Speaking of Western Conference Final, the Oilers are hoping to make it back there after they were obviously in the Cup Final just a season ago. They were continuing their road trip in San Jose as they took on the Sharks. The final score would be 3-2 in favor of the Oilers, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Jeff Skinner, 14:57 of the second period, getting his 15th goal of the year, assisted by Evan Bouchard and Matthias Janmark. There was no scoring the rest of the third period, so 3-2 would be the final score. Okay, now take a look at the standings. So the Toronto Maple Leafs have an X beside their name, which means they have clinched a spot in the postseason. They have a record of 46-25-4. They have 96 points. They are leading that division by 3 points over the Lightning, and all teams have 7 games remaining, so every game is going to be crucial from here on out to decide whether you're first, second, or third in your division. The Lightning have a record of 44-26-5. They have 93 points. The Florida Panthers are just 1 point behind their state rival. Their record is 44-27-4. They have 92 points. All right, off to the Metropolitan Division. Washington Capitals have an X beside their name. They have clinched a playoff spot. Pretty sure they did that last week, if I'm not mistaken. They have a record of 48-18-9. They have 105 points. The Carolina Hurricanes have also a playoff spot. They have an X beside their name. They have a record of 46-24-4. They have 96 points. They trail the Capitals by 9 points in that division. And let's be honest, this late in the season, even though they have a game in hand and there's 8 games remaining, I feel that Washington will more than likely get the Metropolitan crown. And the third team are the injury-plagued New Jersey Devils. They have a record of 40-29-7. They have 87 points with 6 games remaining. More than likely, they're going to finish as the number 3 seed. But hey, at least they're going to get back into the playoffs after missing it last season. 2 teams in the wild card are both from the Atlantic Division. The Ottawa Senators have a record of 40-29-6. They have 86 points with 7 games remaining on their schedule. The Montreal Canadiens also have 7 games remaining on their schedule with a record of 36-30-9. They have 81 points. They are 5 points behind the Sens. And even though both teams have 7 games remaining, I feel that Ottawa is more than likely going to finish as the number 1 seed in the wild card spot at least. And Montreal is in a dogfight, to say the least. You're going to see just how close the standings are right below them. So I'd say the 2 teams that are more than likely going to be giving Montreal a run for their money are the New York Rangers, who are just 2 points behind them. They have a record of 36, 32, and 7. They have 79 points. And the Columbus Blue Jackets have 8 games remaining. Therefore, they have a game on hand on both the Rangers and the Canadiens. They have a record of 34, 31, and 9. They have 77 points. They're 4 points behind Montreal for that last playoff spot. So I think those are the 3 teams that are going to be fighting the hardest for a playoff spot. Underneath them, you have the Detroit Red Wings. They are 6 points out of a playoff spot, so they're not eliminated. But being this late in the season with 8 games to go, you would have to win out pretty much every game the rest of the year if you wanted to have a chance to play catch up. And I just think it's too little, too late. It's a shame because at the start of the season, I did say that Detroit was finally going to end their decade-long drought and make it into the postseason. But I think they're going to come up just a little short this year. The team below them are the New York Islanders. They are 7 points behind with 8 games remaining. Again, they're not eliminated, but when you need 4 wins in a row, and then you need Detroit, Columbus, New York, and Montreal to all lose 4 games in a row just for them to play catch up. And I've said this in a lot of my videos, and it doesn't just affect hockey; it affects other sports. If you're relying on other teams in your division to lose, and you're clearly praying for a lot. I mean, you should have just played better earlier in the season or had more wins, I guess, to be blunt. But I just think for the Islanders, it's just too little, too late at this point, and they'll more than likely miss the postseason. And speaking of more than likely going to miss the postseason, the bottom 3 teams, the Pittsburgh Penguins are 9 points back with 6 games remaining. So if they were to lose, say, 2 more games, they would technically be eliminated because it'd be impossible point-wise to catch up in the standings. So they have 72 points, and they will more than likely miss the playoffs for the 3rd straight season, which means I can guarantee there's going to be some off-season moves. So there's no way that they're going to want to try to just be mediocre and middle of the pack kind of a team. They have aging stars like Chris Letang, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin on their team. And again, they got a couple of contracts too that aren't looking too great. I mean, Erik Karlsson, you could say, is one of them. So I got a funny feeling there's going to be some off-season moves in the Steel City. There's no way they're going to have a repeat and try to do one more year of cup or bust when they haven't even been in the playoffs since 2022. So I think there's going to be some changes, to say the least, in the in Steel City. All right, their state rivals, the Philadelphia Flyers, have a record of 31-36 and 9. They have 71 points. They're 10 points back with 6 games remaining. So if they were to lose 1 more game or possibly 2 more games, then they would officially be eliminated from the postseason because they'd have to get at least 6 wins in a row just to catch up and be ahead of Montreal. And it's very unlikely they're going to win 6 in a row. And again, even if they do win 6 in a row, there's a good chance Montreal's going to get at least 1 more win this season. The Rangers should get at least 1 or 2 more wins. So I think for the Flyers, they're pretty much toast. Okay, the bottom 2 teams, I never would have guessed this, are the Buffalo Sabres, but they're not the worst team in the league right now. They have 8 games remaining. The record is 32, 36, and 6. They have 70 points. They are technically 11 points out of a playoff spot. So they're not officially eliminated, but again, when you're 10-plus points out of a playoff spot this late in the season, it's very unlikely you're going to make it. And unfortunately, that drought will end up being 14 years, if I'm not mistaken, because the last time they made it was in 2011. So it's been almost a decade and a half since the city of Buffalo has seen any playoff hockey, and I'm sure they would have loved for that drought to end. The worst team in the league. Who would have guessed at the start of the season that Boston Bruins would be in last place? I mean, they were so competitive, and then they ended up losing 11 games in a row. Prior to that losing streak, they were right in the mix. They were pretty sure at one point they were in the top 3 of that division. Then they were for sure in a wild card spot, and then they've just been going down, down, down. Now, they're only 1 point behind Buffalo, so obviously if Boston were to win 1 more game and Buffalo were to lose the next game, these 2 teams would switch positions. So they're not guaranteed to finish in last place, but they are guaranteed to be missing out on the postseason. Their record is 30, 37, and 9. They have 69 points on the season so far. All right, now we'll go take a look at the teams in the Western Conference. The Winnipeg Jets, I said, are still top of their division. You can see there's X's all across that division, which means 3 teams are for sure making the playoffs out of that division there. The record's 52, 20, and 4. They have 108 points. The Stars are right on their tail, though, with a game in hand. They're just 4 points back at Winnipeg, so Dallas could easily play catch-up and take over first place in that division. So Winnipeg can't really go on easy mode or easy streak. They got to put their foot on the pedal and keep winning more games if they want to stay ahead and win that division. The Dallas Stars are in second place, so they have a record of 50, 21, and 4. The Colorado Avalanche have a record of 47, 26, and 4. They have 98 points. So if it ends up being a Dallas Colorado first round series, that would obviously be epic. And it would be the match where Mikko Rantanen plays against his former team. And if for some reason Dallas happens to take over first place, then it'd be a rematch of last year with Winnipeg and Colorado in the first round. And I would be willing to bet if that were the case, it's not going to end in 5 games. Like Winnipeg is just that much better. It should go at least 6 or 7. That would be a series I would love to watch. But at the same time, I feel like Dallas and Colorado would be even more of a must watch because one of those teams will be going home after round number 1. All right, Vegas, I said before, they are top of their division. They have an X beside their name, which means they have clinched a playoff spot. They have a record of 45, 22, and 8. They have 98 points. The LA Kings are 3 points behind them with 7 games remaining. They have a record of 43, 23, and 9. And the Edmonton Oilers are 2 points behind the Kings. They have a record of 44, 26, and 5. So it's looking like it more than likely will be, for the 4th straight season, the LA Kings and Edmonton Oilers meeting in the first round. And but this time, I wouldn't give the edge to the Oilers in this match if the Kings just look that much better. And they have the best home record in the entire NHL. So if they get home ice advantage even through round 1, they could see themselves possibly playing Vegas or whoever it is in the next round. 2 teams in the wild card. I'm not surprised. The Blues, because they're 11-game winning streak, they have a bumped ahead of the Minnesota Wild. They have a record of 42, 28, and 7. Unlikely they're going to be able to catch up to Colorado. They would need to win 5 games in a row, and the Avs would have to lose probably 3 or 4 games out of the remaining schedule just for St. Louis to play catch-up. But even though you finish as a wild card team, this is a very dangerous team. I wouldn't want to be Vegas or the Winnipeg Jets if either of those teams win their respective divisions. That's a scary team in St. Louis, and they're looking like the team like they were back in 2019. So this could be one of those teams you take for granted, and before you know it, they're in like the Western Final or Stanley Cup Final. Anything can happen. Minnesota Wild have been reeling, to say the least. They were in 3rd place at one point in their division. Then they're in the first wild card spot, and now they find themselves below the Blues in the standings, but they're still hanging on to that last playoff spot. They have a record of 41, 28, and 7. They have 89 points. The Calgary Flames are on the outside looking in. They're 5 points behind Minnesota with a game in hand. So every game for Calgary is going to be crucial if they want to try to catch up to Minnesota. But then again, you would need Minnesota to lose 3 games in a row, and Calgary would have to win 3 games in a row just to take over that last wild card spot. Can it happen? I mean, Minnesota has been kind of reeling, so I wouldn't be surprised. But if I was a betting man, I feel like Minnesota should be able to win at least 3 or the last 6 games, which would solidify them into a playoff position, I do believe. So the Flames have a record of 36, 27, and 12. They're 5 points back with 7 games remaining, so they do have a game in hand. But again, like I just finished saying, they would need to win out the remaining of their schedule, and Minnesota would have to go like 1-5 or 2-4 in their last 6 games just for Calgary to be able to play catch up. So I feel like for now, it seems like the top 8 teams should get in, but anything can happen as well. The team below Calgary are the Vancouver Canucks. They're 9 points over a playoff spot with 7 games remaining. More than likely, they're going to miss the playoffs. There's just been too much off-ice controversy and too much drama. And for a team that won their division last year, there was high expectations coming into this season that they should be able to compete not only for a playoff spot, but possibly a second straight Pacific Division title. But that's definitely not going to happen. So we'll see what the offseason brings for Vancouver. It's going to be a tough one, to say the least. Like I said, there's been high expectations all season long for this team to be a better team. But unfortunately, they find themselves 9 points out of a playoff spot, which means they'd have to win 5 games in a row. And there's no way that the Flames and the Wild are losing 5 games in a row or losing out on their season. So I feel like it's just too little, too late. And if you're a Canucks fan, I feel for you. Let's put it that way. But it's been a hell of a ride, and we'll see what next season brings. The Utah Hockey Club are 9 points out of a playoff spot with 6 games remaining, which means if they won their last 6 games, that'd be 12 points. That could put them at 92. So I think it's unlikely, very unlikely that they're going to make the playoffs. But to be honest, for a team that just relocated and they started fresh and like off to a good start. They had a pretty decent season. I didn't think that they would finish fifth or sixth in that division. I would have said seventh or eighth. But the fact that they finished ahead of Nashville in the standings is mind blowing to say the least. So if you finish ahead of a team that was like cup or bust, then clearly you can give yourself a pat on the back. But obviously, there's no small victories. Obviously, they would have preferred to have competed for a playoff spot, but we'll see what next season brings. The record is 34, 30, and 12. They have 80 points. The Anaheim Ducks, after their loss last night, I might as well just show you the rest of the teams in the West. They have been officially eliminated from the playoffs for the 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, seventh season in a row. There will not be any playoff hockey in the Orange County. The record is 33, 34, and 8. They have 74 points. The Seattle Kraken definitely took a bit of a dive this season after hoping to bounce back and get into a playoff spot. After 76 games played, they have 32, 38, and 6 is their record. They have 70 points on the season. The Nashville Predators, who I just briefly talked about before when I was talking about Utah, have the second worst record in the Central Division with a record of 27, 41, and 8, 62 points. Very disappointing season. They obviously had cup or bust mentality when they signed Marchessault, Steven Stamkos, and Braden Shea, but that clearly went down the toilet pretty quick into the season. The Chicago Blackhawks have a record of 21, 44, and 10. They have 52 points. They are also eliminated for the fifth straight season in a row. It's clearly a rebuild for Chicago, and we'll see what moves are made in the offseason and where they fit in the draft, who they select, and any trades that they may or may not acquire. And last but least, the San Jose Sharks have the worst record in the National Hockey League with a record of 20, 45, and 10. They have 50 points. 7 games remaining are on their schedule. For the Sharks, just like the Blackhawks, they're clearly in a rebuild, and they're going to be in a rebuild for, I think, for a couple of years. I just think the Pacific is just way too dangerous and way too competitive. I still think that Vegas is always going to be there. Edmonton should be in contention almost on a yearly basis. LA, especially after this past season, they're probably going to be another top 3 team in that Pacific Division yet again next year. So you can already count the top 3 spots gone, just like that. The Flames, I think should be better next year. The Canucks are a huge question mark. The Ducks, they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. Like they're kind of in the middle of the pack. So the Ducks probably will be a little bit better. I mean, they had 24-point lead on the Sharks this year. They probably will have a better record than the Sharks do next year. The Kraken, I feel like, should be a lot better next year. They might even finish higher than the Ducks in the standings. And then the Sharks are at the basement. So I just think it's just too competitive of a division for the Sharks to get out of the basement for a while. But that's what a lot of teams have to do. They got to be at the basement, draft player after player, year after year, and then start developing them, and then eventually be competitive yet again. So I know at some point in the future the Sharks will have a team back in the postseason. It's just a matter of when. All right, that's going to take care of my recap for Wednesday and Thursday night of the National Hockey League. As always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative as well. Until next time, and as always, take care.